and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Stacy, the Program Director of the Emerge Conference. I've been doing that for several years and also now responsible for our program in Istanbul. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you all there. So this Emerge Live, let's say, series is, kind of a teaser of a program in Istanbul. And the topic of today's live is how to tell a hype bubble from a hyper growth potential. And the speakers for today are those who are going to be in Istanbul. So you can join us there on site and, listen to the talks there or even meet them there, who knows. And by the way, I'm speaking to our listeners at the moment. If any questions come up to you during the session, during this live session, please don't hesitate to send them over to the chat here in YouTube. And I'll ask these questions at the end of this live session. And the best question, which we will, choose with our speakers today, is going to be granted a free general attendee ticket to Emerge Istanbul. So don't miss this opportunity. And well, let's start. Let me introduce you to our wonderful speakers today. Here with us is Bruce Kurtz. He's Chief Marketing Officer at Aloha browser. Alex Posternak, he's co-founder and Chief Investment Officer at INTEMA. And Taskincay, she's the Strategy and Business Development Manager at Kurtz Holding. And let me give you the mic to all of you just to say a couple of sentences about what you do and how you relate to the topic of today's live session. So please go ahead. Maybe Bruce, as I said your name the first.
Stacy, well, thank you. It's great to be here, and hello to everyone out there in the virtual digital world. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Bruce Kurtz. I'm the CMO of Aloha browser. So I've been in Web 2 and Web 3 fintech technology companies for the last 15 or 20 years. I'm really passionate about Web 3, but because my roots are in Web 2 and traditional tech, it's an interesting blend, but this is a great topic of conversation. So happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Posternak. I'm the co-founder and Chief Investment Officer of INTEMA AI. INTEMA is a VC fund focused on deep tech startups and also the accelerator and consulting. We have a very strong expert board consisting of people from R&D functions of top tech companies, and we help the companies. So we provide truly smart money. So we help the companies not only with the funds, but also help them to improve the tech. Recently, and we are following all the trends. So in AI especially, So thanks for having me here, and good to see everyone.
Thanks a lot, Stacy, for inviting me as well. I work at Kurtz Holding. It's a leading conglomerate in Turkey, and myself supporting VC investments. Last year, we set up agnostic funds, and we cover startups from seed to Series B stages, and also VC investments. Till now, we invested like 4 startups and a few VC funds. And myself, I also worked at Aldea Ventures in Barcelona and 500 Emerging Europe previously. That's how I know Stacy as well from last year when I was working at 500. Thanks a lot again.
Yeah, great to see you all here. And really looking forward to meeting you in Istanbul very, very soon, actually. And now let's dive into the nuances of the Web3 and generative AI industries and share your opinion on the rising number of, startups in these fields. But at first, I want to ask you, those of you who, have got an answer to this question. So what you think is the most hype technology at the moment? Hype.
think Alex can answer that.
Yeah, so I can start. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think just we have these hype cycles, and it happens all the time. Like every few years, we have some new things which most of the people consider completely new, that will be changing the entire world. There is a strong belief in that. So a few years ago, that was a metaverse and Web3. Before that, like blockchain things. Now I think it's more about generative AI. And recently, before that, was AI in general, like machine learning. However, machine learning existed for a number of years. So like artificial intelligence as a term was invented, and it actually united a lot of things. However, also interesting thing about these hype cycles is to say that usually there is no standard definition of this hype term. So somebody invents that, for instance, like metaverse. So that is so broad and nobody understands where are the ranges of it, where it ends actually. So same thing is with generative AI and other things as well.
Yeah. Well, and Eshe, have you seen a recent increase in the number of, trendy tech startups globally, if we speak about generative AI or Web3 a little bit in the past, as Alex said?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the answer is quite different for generative AI and Web3 startups. I mean, the number of Gen AI startups in Turkey is pretty low. I met only a few of them, which is still like way behind the global benchmark. For Web3, it was rather a prosperous year in Turkey, especially in 2021 and 2. A lot of them were popping up, while this year was rather low, and this is similar to global trends, as you can imagine. And when we look at outside of Turkey, I think YC is a good benchmark to understand the hype around it. I read like a few months ago, like it was this year's winter batch for YC, like more than 20% of the startups were focused on generative AI, and these startups like cover a range of multiple use cases like sales, data analytics, and marketing. When we look at the funding, 2023 is like already a record year for Gen AI startups. The numbers are like topping over $14 billion, and it was much less like last year. And it is still a nascent market, but we see like large funding rounds, like lofty valuations, and this is likely to stay in the markets for a while. And we can even expect like more M&A deals, particularly in Gen AI infrastructure. That's kind of, those valuations are showing the VCs' willingness to gain exposure to the space and their conviction on Gen AI prospects, I can say, especially at a time when startups in other sectors are having tough time convincing VCs. When we look at Web3, I think it's quite different. There are like obviously evangelists and the critics surrounding Web3. Like 2 years ago, the Twitter's founder, like Jack Dorsey, was saying that the decentralization itself, which is the main promise of the Web3, is not achievable, and the Web3 will simply be a centralized entity with a different label. Still, like startups are challenging major tech companies with solutions which promise to give consumers more ownership to their content, improve data privacy, and cut the fees like taken by the middlemen. But it's also important to keep in mind that Web3 is a very general concept, right? I mean, it includes like wallets, like decentralized exchange platforms, metaverses, Play Store, and like many more, and all of them has different dynamics. But there are absolutely like, a considerable drop in the funding in comparison to last year. I mean, as known, investors now pay more attention to startups with a proof of profitability and attractive economics. That hurts Web3 startups, which are typically based on the future expectation of profitability. But what I can say is the ones that have strong fundamentals and like the ones like more in the Web3 infrastructure space are still likely to be ahead of the competition.
Yeah, and Bruce, how do you feel about the state of Web3? You've been there for a long time and you've seen how the industry was changing, evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very positive about the future of Web3. I think the two, I'll focus, there are a lot of things happening right now in Web3, but the two I'll focus on right now is obviously we're still in a bear market. So there's there's a low consumer sentiment and confidence about Web3 right now. And the other piece that has been changing quite rapidly is government regulation. When I first started getting into blockchain and crypto 4 or 5 years ago, it was still very much the Wild West, right? Kind of all around the world, and governments are still trying to figure out what is blockchain and crypto and how to regulate and tax it. But slowly but surely, they're starting to figure it out. And that's also creating a shift too in where organizations play in terms of exchanges and projects where they do their business registration, where they do their activities. And also we may see a shift more, for example, into the Middle East, like Dubai, that type of region, for where those companies ultimately go. But yeah, there's a lot of things happening in Web3. It's still an exciting field, but because of different factors happening right now, it's less hype and more about actual use cases and what can people do right now with blockchain in a real world situation, and less about what could happen in the future.
Yeah, and marketing. Yeah, we've been in Dubai recently. Emerge had its previous conference organized in Dubai. It was really interesting to be there and to have the local ecosystem join us. And we explored it, of course, and seen a lot of Web3 startups who moved there. And also, as I understand, but correct me if I'm wrong, India also looks like one of the markets where Web3 is kind of, paving its way and even working with the government and so on. So it's kind of shifting, I guess, a little bit geographically. And what features do you think make a Web3 startup successful now? Because I believe that is different from how it was back when the blockchain industry was only at its dawn.
Yeah, well, Essie touched on this a little bit from the VC point of view, and I've seen that too. I mean, in the current state of things in the Web3, I mean, the past 3 or 4 years ago, you could basically snap your fingers, create a blockchain project, and get fundraising simply because it's a crypto blockchain project. You can't do that anymore. It's really more about an actual, real business use case and what is the actual application of your project. So yeah, it's a lot more business realistic now, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, and also one of the questions that I'm interested in is that I'm wondering whether it's really like that, as you said, like you're just do this and investors rush with their monies, as you're like
in the past it was like that,
but now it seems like obviously the macroeconomic state and the situation in the world differs at the moment, and it seems like investors have become more cautious about these hype things. And giving the mic to Alex, I wanted to ask about the generative AI and the state of it with in the context of the VC industry, and how you think startups are feeling now, these high technology startups, generative AI, whether investors rush with their monies, or they feel like, there are so many of them that they need to kind of really prove that, they are worth it? What do you think?
To add up 50 cents on the Web3, as Bruce mentioned. So just completely agree. I just wanted to add, there is some clever guy. I don't remember the full story, but he figured out the hype cycle stages. So there were about five stages. And maybe somebody from Gartner, I don't know. But it started with the innovation trigger, and then it was about the inflated expectations somewhere in the middle, and then ending up in the plateau of productivity. So what's just to categorize, like what Bruce was saying, is like that several years ago it was more about the inflated expectations, because everybody was sending money to these startups that were having these buzzwords in the pitch decks, no matter what it was, like Web3 or blockchain or crypto. And now I see a lot of these people now not so rush in terms of investing in these hype things, but the startups started to create something at this stage, and something useful. I would say that is really changing the environment, but nobody cares already. I mean, in the media, so nobody is carried about that. Nobody covers that because it's not that interesting. It's after the hype already, so nobody is interested in real results. So the thing is that with generative AI, the same thing is happening, but it is on the earlier stage right now. So it's on the innovation trigger. After 2022, when DALL-E 2 and Stable Diffusion and also the ChatGPT was having a new release, and that was a game changer in terms of technology, and everybody was very enthusiastic about that. So there was a big hype about that, and inflated expectations. So everybody was this topic was overhyped, and this is really bad for the productivity. So because everybody is like we are seeing the thing with the valuations and the investments in this year, which was as he highlighted also, and the investments from the VC, for instance, in generative AI, they just exceeded in this first half of 2023, they exceeded 13 billion, maybe about 20 billion already, which is compared to 2022, the first half was like 4 billion or 5 billion approximately. So, and this is really bad, because even large investors like Sequoia, they are making huge deals, investing in zero revenue companies with just good technology as they consider it, not carried too much about the forecasted revenues and the ROIs, like how they will return their money, because they like the technology, they don't care about the financial projections. So that is very bad for the industry in a general, because these expectations will not be fulfilled. And in a few years' time, we will see like a lot of crashes of these companies and a lot of bad results coming out. So investors will be confused with that, and they would be reluctant to invest further, even in good companies. And we would see the plateau of productivity at that point of time. And what we are doing actually is we are changing in our company. We are changing the approach to these investments. So we are paying a lot of attention to the technology, and like in finance, there is a category of normalized EBITDA, so which is actually cleared out of some effects, and actually that is a real EBITDA. So what we are doing is we are normalizing the technology and clearing it out of the effects and some expected valuations and everything results. So that requires a good expertise and approach. First of all, to understand the technology, to be not very enthusiastic, to be realistic about that, maybe a bit pessimistic.
Okay, so pessimism helps, right?
Yeah.
Well, not every time, but anyway. And a question to Ece. I just realized that maybe you've been at 500 Istanbul at the time when Web3 was kind of a, right, on the rise of this hype and everything, and now it's generative AI. And I wanted to ask you, if you were to decide whether to invest in a Web3 or generative AI startup, what would you dig about them in the first place? Would this due diligence process differ anyhow from other cases?
Yeah, I mean, during the time that I was at 500 last year, like we invested 3-4 Web3 startups. I think there was no generative AI. What I believe is that due diligence for these sectors does not really matter in fundamentals. Like at a high level, VCs look at the team, product, competition, and market to build their conviction. What could be more relevant is that, for example, for Web3, to assess whether the founders can access the right community or not. Relevant work experience is a bit tricky here, as big corporates are slowly adopting Web3, like generative AI technologies. It's rather tough to have maybe work experience in the very exact field. Rather, those founders are coming from strong technical background that can help them to have the right vision and know-how to build those companies. Particularly for generative AI, what I can say lastly is that this influx of VC dollars will also mean that these companies will face accelerated pressure to build lucrative business models and defensible moats around their products. Otherwise, as Alex mentioned, we will see a lot of maybe failures in a few years. That's what I can say.
Yeah, and I believe my last question before we switch to the questions that our audience asked in the chat would be maybe a tricky one or a controversial one, I don't know, you name it. What do you think will be the next hype technology of the next, cycle? Bruce, Alex, Ece?
I'll defer to the VC folks.
Okay. Okay, Alex, what will be the next hype technology?
That is quite difficult question. It's like to look into a crystal ball, because when it was when everybody was trying to forecast like what would be the future of AI in the next few years, like few years ago, it was everybody was talking like at the end of the day, it would be the last thing that will happen, that AI will change the approach for creative people. But first of all, the AI would change the business processes, which are standard processes, like for the operations and other things. But which happened is the different thing is that we have started with the creative industries, with designers and different content generators, and that is really interesting. So that's difficult to forecast. And the other thing is that we have the technologies which we know how they develop, and we can see the limitations of this development, and we can figure out what will be happening next. For instance, the generative AI, we've been forecasting ourselves just before the hype started. So we knew that there would be a huge potential for that. I mean, again, it's not like how it will be called, like a metaverse or like generative AI or some other buzzword. So we don't know. So that would actually be driven by some ideas of some content makers. And so, but in terms of technology, we see a lot of potential in terms of generative AI, I would say, and its application to the industries. Because currently what we see is like about 50% of generative AI is captured by the natural language processing things and tools and voice assistants and other things. Just a few interesting things about the video content creation, for instance, deepfakes and other things, how they might be applied. So we, for instance, we are in search of these applications, first of all. That is what of interest to us. So because we know the technology and we know well the technology, and we're interested in new applications of it. So for instance, in our recent accelerator, and we are making the accelerators like topic accelerators, like very niche accelerators. So recently we launched the accelerator for generative AI to gather the solutions from all over the globe relative to the topic. And we see quite interesting, sometimes exotic applications of this. And that is what's interesting, like how this would be changing big industries. This is what will be called next day, how the hype would be called.
Yeah, I'm really tempted to ask you about the exotic, applications of generative AI, but let's leave it to our conference in Istanbul, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, and let's switch to
let's keep some intrigue.
Yeah. So let's switch to some of the questions. They are not addressed to a specific speaker, to some of you, but just if any of you have got an answer, please jump in. So Dana asked, what are the very first steps to be done when a startup joins Web3? And is Metaverse ready or still too early to start a startup there and invest in it? So there are two questions about the first steps when a startup joins Web3 and Metaverse and investing in it. So maybe Bruce?
Okay, well, I'll start with the second question. Is it too late to get into Web3 or invest in it?
in Metaverse. Is it still no, it's still too early to start a startup there. But actually
no, I wouldn't say. I would say that this is my opinion of the metaverse. The metaverse is a cool idea. It's still very young. So everyone's great grandiose concept of what the metaverse can be, it's still just kind of a theory, a concept. So the idea of having this metaverse world and we're all being entertained in there, that's really far off in the future. So the short answer is no. It's not too early to either create a metaverse environment project or invest in it. Just be smart about what you're investing in. Do your research if you're an investor to see if it's something that's tangible and has real business potential. And if you're creating a metaverse project, then it's the same thing. There's a lot of metaverse hype, and what would you be doing creating a metaverse project that would be different than other metaverse projects, and how would it be beneficial in an actual use case? Like, why would people really want to be in it?
Yeah, and about the first steps that a startup should do when entering the world of Web3. I believe it's something about like launching a startup in the Web3 industry or so.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a wide open question. So you could tackle that either from the business standpoint about what you do with creating your business, your value proposition, your business plan, or what you're doing with marketing your project into Web3. So there's a lot of different ways that could go. So I think that's an interesting general question, but it would need to be more specific for me to fine tune.
Yeah, I'd say that come to Merge and we will discuss that. Actually, I know that there will be answers on stage, so yeah, please come. So next question, if Eche and Alex, let me switch to the next one, right?
Okay.
Yeah, what do you think? Is there a balance between the real demand for practical world applications, excitement around new technologies? So real demand for these applications and excitement around them. So are they kind of balanced or?
I will say yes. I mean, for both sectors, maybe more balance for generative AI. Like, I mean, we see last year all these companies, like all this, big fashion companies like Louis Vuitton, like many of them that you can imagine, were launching their own program and like brand loyalty Web3 programs. I don't know what's happened to them this year's. I was following last year's mostly. I think there's still demand from this big giants, and also for generative AI, like all these companies are even setting up their own ChatGPT platforms, or also for privacy issues, like not to distribute like any internal information. At least from a B2B side, I'm not sure about the C side, but like I can see there is a demand and supply equilibrium at some point, but it should be maybe more balanced in a few years.
Yeah, Alex, do you have anything to add to it? Or
yeah, I have a different point of view, so I think they are imbalanced, and because the expectations are much higher than the real doings, the real actions. That's one thing. Another thing is the imbalance between the supply and demand. So actually that intersects with the previous question, like what the startup should do first of all is to make a good CASDEV, to understand the demand, to understand the potential customer. That's in the metaverse or in any other industry. That's the first thing. Because we see a lot of startups on some particular topic, and there is a huge squeeze towards some area, like for instance, like the language startups that I've mentioned before. And however, there are some areas that are underdeveloped at all. So they require a different approach, but it's actually more interesting to do something in these areas. And but you need to define them. So don't make just another startup just like your neighbor is doing, because you like how he is doing that. Just first of all, try to understand what is required on the market, and understand then how you fill this gap, like whether you can provide this customer with this solution. That's the most important thing, and that would actually mitigate this imbalance. And also what is creating the first thing which is creating is the expectations and the hype around this, and the real actions done by people who are doing something, not just making the noise, like fake it till you make it, but making real stuff. Yeah, that's important.
yeah, great. I like this motto, make real stuff. Yeah, and the last question, I believe, from Sergey, he asks, can you recommend any media, platforms, blogs where one can find updates on the latest trends and developments in generative AI, Web3, and other disruptive technologies? If anything comes, up to your mind, please share. Any blogs you read, you follow?
My major source of information, but it's not actually which would be achievable for general audience is we gather a lot of information from the startups, from the community. So people come to us and they describe to us their projects and their ideas and their forecasts. So we receive huge volume of data from this exercise. And however, I do read posts of many people, so many influencers, quite good.
LinkedIn.
Across LinkedIn, yes, I think it's very, very good. There are a lot of buzz, but many people are creating really interesting summaries, I would say. They summarize a lot of information. So also like a lot of blogs and other things. But the news also, when you read the news, it's usually news are written mostly by the journalists. So the journalists are not technical people. So in the news, you just see the final figures, but you don't see a lot of things about technology. So just a few journalists, they actually do this work, additional work, like talking with the industry leaders and people who are the technical guys who know actually, and they are taking interviews. Interviews are also very helpful and interesting to watch. Yeah, but the problem is not with I would say is not with the volume of the information. So it's a huge amount of data. So you just have 24/7 is not enough to digest that. So it's the aspect is like the major thing is to prioritize this data and just maybe somebody will make some kind of startup based on ChatGPT just to summarize all the information you need, which is tailor-made specifically for your interests. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Any other recommendations?
Well, I mostly like listen more than I read, like more like the podcast. The ones that I like most is the one on Spotify and also in other platforms I can imagine called Acquired, but it's a vertical agnostic podcast that I listen all the time, but I believe there are also contents about generative AI and Web3.
Great. Yeah, noted. Good, really. I'm not a podcast person, but I'm now in the podcast. That, ironic. But anyway, it's really interesting. I'll check it out. I'd say that I'm not giving any recommendations, but I'd say that, as Alex has said, you have to find a source, if it's not, and even if it's a media outlet that you like. You like how these people choose the news they speak about, or how they digest the information. And it's like finding your own connection with those people. So yeah, and I hope you will find some of the bloggers. I said I don't give recommendations, but I have one. I really love the blog of Beth Hadley. She is from the UK, and she writes about VR and AR in e-commerce and other major luxury and retail brands. Ece has given a couple of examples of these applications. So yeah, it's really interesting to read her. So I guess this is it. Thanks so much for this. We need to check which question we choose. Whose question we choose to grant this person the general attendee ticket. But from my point of view, I'd say that the question that was that we discussed the most was the one about the very first steps a startup should do, while entering an industry. But we kind of made a conclusion that it's the same actually when you create a startup in any other field. You have to be just conscious, right, about what you do and make real stuff. But let me know if you have any other opinion on the questions from the audience.
all the questions were good. Yeah, but that one that you recommended is a good choice.
Yeah. Okay. So then I congratulate Dana. I hope that I pronounced the name well. Yeah, and Dana, congratulations. You're coming to Emerge in Istanbul. Looking forward to meeting you there, and probably you'll meet Ece, Bruce, and Alex in person there, or just, listen to them on stage. Really happy to have you here, all of you, the audience, and our wonderful speakers. And yeah, see you in Istanbul in just several weeks, actually, already. Thanks so much.